Good afternoon. Wanted to do this will probably be, hopefully be a really brief video. Um, been really busy for the past month. I think I mentioned in one of my last videos that I've been helping a family member move, and also the weather has turned here finally, and so I've been getting the yard ready and mulching and the whole 9 yards there. So haven't really had much time to do a whole lot in terms of woodworking videos per se, but I've been doing some things, and one of the things I did was this here. It's a Columbian brand bench machinist vise, or bench vise if you want to call it that. My father-in-law gave this to me a few weeks back, and he was a machinist for many years, and he retired. I just was quite a while ago now, about 14 or 15 years ago. He retired from that particular job, and so he hadn't really used this vise in that long. It was one of the vices he used at work. It's a Columbian brand. It's a 603 series. I looked up the other night. I looked up the this particular make and model. I couldn't find any exact information on it. In terms of when it was exactly when these vices were made, and so on and so forth. I knew I'd heard of Columbian brand vices before, not super familiar with them. I know they have they had a pretty good reputation for a long time, and I think they were bought by Wilton, and at some point, maybe in the 70s or 80s. Wilton obviously is a very well known maker of vices. My old job, we had every press had a Wilton vice on it. But this brand here is also pretty well known. As I said, they've been out of business in terms of their name for a while, I guess. But this is a 3-inch jaw. But I put it on a scale. It weighs just over 30 pounds, and they were manufactured. From what I could tell, the nearest dates this particular model. I mean, it was made like between like the mid 1950s and right around 1970 or so. So this vise is, I'm guessing this vise is probably about close to 60 years old. It was in pretty good shape when my father-in-law gave it to me. It was quite obviously pretty much covered in rust. It did open and close, but not very smoothly. The shaft here, right here, that the everywhere, like right in here and right here, everywhere that was exposed was pretty much rusted out. And as I said, it would open and close, but not really smoothly. But the real issue was the swivel base here was completely rusted out, and it wouldn't, it just wouldn't open or close or swivel or anything like that. So what I did is I got a 5-gallon bucket, filled it with warm water, and I put in about roughly a cup of citric acid powder, and I just dropped the entire vise into it, and I let it take a little on here. It's the vices talk about it a little bit, but so I let it soak in this citric acid solution for about a day, a little bit more than a day. Took it out, cleaned it with like a wire brush and a Scotch-Brite pad, and I got a lot of the surface rust off of it. Then I took it apart completely. I completely disassembled the entire vise. Every part that would come off, I removed, and that was virtually everything on the vise is removable. What happened is what was going on was the brake in the gear brake had seized up, but now you can see it swivels really easily. So I took it all apart, all of the smaller parts like the gear brake, the set screws that held the adjustment bars. I put those in a cup of evaporust. The three larger vise pieces, the base, the swivel base, the two jaws, and the thread, the main thread. I returned those to a bucket, the same 5-gallon bucket, but I once again cup of citric acid powder and warm water, let them soak for about a day, and then I went to the task of cleaning this thing up. It was pretty rusty, as you could probably imagine, having sat in a basement for 15 plus years. I hesitate to call this, I never know the right word to use when we talk about taking old tools and getting them back to working order. Is it a restoration? Is it refurbishment? I don't know. To be honest, I don't know exactly what we would call it. To me, a restoration, maybe a restoration is more when you take a vise or any tool like this, and you try to make it look like it was like it was when it was brand new. That really wasn't my goal with this. The main goal here was to get it working again, and I wanted it to look decent. And I have it. It's nice and so-called shiny again. It is not perfectly shiny. There are some spots and whatnot on it, and it's still. It probably could even be cleaned again if I want to really go that far, but anything more would require me sandblasting, is having somebody sandblast it. I don't have a sandblaster myself, but otherwise it turned out really well. The swivel base, the swivel works great, and it's real simple, and it's right now it's not. Obviously, it's not fastened to anything. It's just, which it does need to be fastened down to. I'm probably going to get a piece of plywood, put a cleat on it so I can push it up against the bench, or even when I want to use it, put it in the leg, attached to, clamp it down with a leg vise, the cleat I mean, and then I can have it. I can swivel it freely and open and close it without worrying about it tipping. But it really works super smooth. The most difficult part, as I said, was really getting the swivel base off, because that was really seized up. It was unfortunately covered in rust, and there is some pitting here on the base from that rust. It was just rusted out so bad. I thought about sanding it, but it's really not worth the effort. I don't really necessarily care if this vise looks like it's right off of the shelf, new off the shelf. I mean, I want it to work, and I want it to function, and I didn't really want it to be covered in rust. I'm not about to go to town and paint this thing, sandblast it and paint it and do all that. I did do some sanding on it. I also, the anvil was pretty bad here, and the anvil's a really nice feature to have. This anvil's not particularly large, but it is large enough for certain things. They really come in handy if you've never had a vise with one. These bench vices in general, these are one of these items that, to me, anybody who owns a house, or certainly anybody who does DIY work, or you enjoy woodworking or other hobbies, manual hobbies, you'd want a vise like this. I do have another one. It's not a Columbian. It's a Craftsman, smaller vise. It's slightly above what we call a hobby vise, maybe. Um, that I'm actually working on it as well. But when I had to take when I had to take this that large nut there as a 15/16 nut, it was seized even after two soakings and rust remover. I ended up another. Excuse me, just a second. Here's another product that any homeowner really should have in their house's liquid wrench. I sprayed the liquid wrench really is what allowed me to remove that large 15/16 nut. And one thing I'm a little bit torn on is, do I lubricated everything up with 3-in-1 oil. Do I get some general purpose grease and grease the thread as it probably was out of the factory? The screw thread. That I don't know. That certainly is going to hold up longer than 3-in-1 oil, but at the same time, it tends that grease tends to collect a lot more grime, dust, dirt, and so it's sort of like a double-edged sword there. So I don't know if I'm going to do that or just continually add some 3-in-1 oil every few months or so. The real debate, I guess, is, do you go through the trouble that I did, or do you just go buy one of these new? A bench vise. I mean, I've seen them sold at places like Harbor Freight or Lowe's, similar size vices and larger. They run $75 up to $150 or so, and the Wiltons are obviously going to be more money. They're more of a professional grade, in my opinion. They're more of a professional grade vise. This vise here, this particular model, I've seen. I did a little bit of checking online. I've seen them sold where, depending on condition, like the poorest condition, they sell for about $150 up to, I've seen them sell as high as $600 or $700, and then the larger jaws, even they can get really pricey. Generally, I've a lot of people in the woodworking community, they recommend vintage tools over new tools, and oftentimes either the argument being that it's cheaper and you'll learn a lot by restoring it, and then the converse of that argument is it might be more money but it's much better quality. I don't want to steer anybody one way or the other, but in the case of a vise like this, or I don't want to, I'm not hawking for Columbian brand vices. I'm just saying a vintage vise like this. These are generally going to be of much better quality than a cheaper version of it that you would see at a place like Harbor Freight. And once again, I'm not here to knock Harbor Freight or any place for that matter. But what I found with those inexpensive, larger machinist vise like this, they have the screw. I wish I could take it. I don't want to take apart the whole vise just to show you the thread. But the thread on these is much better than the flimsy threads you're going to find on the vices you're going to find at like a home center. They're just not as good, and there's really no two ways around it. There's just no other way to put it. It's just, except to be blunt, they're just not going to be as good as this or any of the vintage vices that you're going to find on the market. The Wiltons, these Columbian, some of the older Craftsman record. Like I said, you could certainly go buy a new Wilton vise, and very, very good quality vices, but you are going to pay a premium price for those, um, for a more professional grade one at least. And I really wouldn't recommend buying a hobbyist grade either unless you're really not planning on doing much other than using it almost like you would use a set of clamps. This is going to be for heavy duty work, pipe, metal work. They can be invaluable when you own a house and you're doing plumbing, for example. Every homeowner at some point is going to get to find themselves in a situation where they need to do some emergency plumbing, where you just can't shut everything down and hope a plumber shows up. Stuff like that. That's where these vices really come in handy, and where I would recommend every homeowner having one. But getting back on topic there, I would highly recommend, if you're in the market for one of these style vices, to see if you can get one at an auction or a garage sale or on eBay or something like that, a vintage one, rather than buying a cheaper new version at a home center or hardware store. These vintage ones, there's a reason that, as I said, this vice is probably 60 years old, and it took up a little bit of cleanup. The cleanup was the cleanup itself was cheap. A 5-gallon bucket that most people have, a pound of citric acid powder cost $4 or $5. It just really took time, and time in the sense that I was waiting. It didn't take me 48 hours to scrub this vice clean. It took me about an hour to get it clean after all was said and done. To get it clean and operational, I mean. That to me is worth, I've talked before about, is restoring tools worth the time and effort? Sometimes no, it's not. I'll be the first person to say that, and I have no problem saying it. Sometimes tools, if you want to restore, refurbish out, whatever word you want to use, they're more trouble than they're worth. In this case, my opinion is they're not. This vice was well worth the effort I put into restoring it, because if I were to buy a vice of this quality brand new, I got it for free, so it made it even better. But even if I paid $150 for it on eBay, and it was had to go through the whole restoration process to buy a quality vice like this brand new, I probably spent $300 or $400. So it was certainly worth the $5 or $6 in materials and the hour or two of my time, to get this vice back up and running, cleaned up. And who knows, maybe I will paint it. I'm not really concerned about painting it, but who knows, if I get bored one day, maybe I will. Other thing I want to talk about, which is really cool, is came across I don't have it here. It's a old Craftsman toolbox. I was actually able to date this. It was 1955. It is a metal box, but it's a machinist toolbox. So it has, most people probably seen the wood machinist toolbox, usually made of oak. They have the top compartment, then they have the metal or the wood face that slides. You open it up, there's a felt. You can slide in, and there's drawers. Well, this is a metal Craftsman version of this toolbox, nearly 70 years old now. It's in really good shape. It does need some work, really, getting dings and whatnot out of it, but there's no real rust. And I think I'm going to work on getting that up and running. I'm really actually looking forward to it. And what I might do there is I might actually film a little bit of that and maybe post the videos to YouTube, see how it goes. But I think that'll be a really, really neat thing to see. And hopefully I can do this box justice and get it up and running again and looking good and functioning like a toolbox. And that's one of those items I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting work up and running, and I shouldn't say up and running, but looking good again, dent free, and then really like I'm going to display it on my shelf. I think it would look really neat. So perhaps this weekend, the following weekend, the stars will align, so to speak, and I'll get working on that. But until then, I really appreciate you watching, and hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.